Hey guys, what's going on? Back again with another zombies video, and this one's gonna be a little bit similar to how I did the Origins Easter egg solve, or the way that I kind of explained it, because that one, like I mentioned, wasn't a solve by me. It was just me kind of relaying the message to pretty much the year 2022, because the Origins stuff was solved back then in 2013. But with this one, it's about the Mob of the Dead scrap paper Easter egg. And again, a lot of it back then was solved. I'm not going to try and discredit anyone who came up with theories or anyone who had solves back then, because I know that's something that big channels do. They try and discredit the small channels, to make their channels look better, like they're the only ones that know what's going on or have like inside information. So I'm going to give a lot of backstory, a lot of context before I get into maybe the actual solve itself. Okay, so back then in 2013 on Mob of the Dead in Alcatraz, we had these scrap papers that were all over the map, and you had to piece them together. And this is the image that you got. I pulled this off of Google, and the image is supposed to represent a comic character, Icarus from Mars, that the Weasel created. And this is the context that I'm going to give you, and like it's going to be a little bit drawn out, but you're going to hopefully have to follow. So the story that Weasel tells us, and I think either Cypher or maybe even the radios on the map or something like that, or towards the Easter egg steps, he created Icarus from Mars while he was in prison, and I think he even created the Mob of Dead loading screen, if I'm not mistaken. He was kind of like an artist and stuff like that. He was inspiring to be a comic creator. Um, so again, he handed in this comic that he created to his editor, and the editor pretty much dissed his comic, wrote a lot of hateful messages on it, and I'm gonna start by saying I don't know if it necessarily parallels stuff that went on at Treyarch, because a lot of the map stuff I think parallels what went on at Treyarch. Either coincidence or on purpose, because you even think of like Transit, the Easter egg steps and stuff like that. How there was Jason Blundell and there was Jimmy, and you had to pick sides, whose map you liked better, and stuff like that. So there are either some coincidences or some stuff that was put into the game from real life. So with this, in this, as far as real life stuff, reminds me of Jesse Snyder. How Jesse Snyder created the zombies mode. How people dissed on his mode. They told him it would never work. It doesn't fit into Call of Duty. He had to convince a lot of people. Then eventually people liked it. So that's some angles that I see it being similar to, but that's not the solve. But again, the scrap paper is a comic created by Weasel, Icarus from Mars, and he gave it to his editor. His editor scribbled all over it, told him like literally 20 different reasons why the comic would never work. And that's pretty much what everybody left it at. Or that, I guess, is what went unsolved from 2013, that people really just took it as that. But as pretty much all the devs, including Jimmy and maybe even Jason, even maybe even Lee Ross, other studios, Cameron Dayton at the other zombie studios, there's so many different layers. On the face value, you see the comic, the character, and a lot of people on face value or the top layers saw or thought that maybe it was supposed to be a version of Shock Gibson because of the zombies in the Shock Gibson comics, and because Shock Gibson can shoot lightning bolts from his hand. That's the theory or solve that people had in 2013. I'm not discrediting it. I'm just adding on to it or giving you another layer that Treyarch probably put into it. Again, so before I move on, you have to realize that it was a comic created by Weasel, and he pretty much got shot down from his editor saying it's never going to work, it's a stupid idea, don't send any more ideas to him and stuff like that. Like I say, it could parallel stuff that went on with in real life with Treyarch. Maybe people are giving, and we kind of have it going on right now in real life, is people give them ideas for maps and stuff like that, and maybe they try and tell them, hey, that idea is not going to work. Who knows? That's just something that you might want to think about. Again, like I mentioned, back then the solve was left at Shock Gibson, and that the fact that a lot of the similarities from Shock Gibson including the look and the colors matched up perfectly with him. There are some differences. I'm not going to try and pick sides saying it's a solve or not a solve, but you have to realize also Treyarch and Call of Duty puts a lot of red herrings, which means it's a lot of misdirection, stuff to trick you. A lot of people left it at, oh, Shot Gibson, case closed. But like I said, also there's so many different layers of solving this stuff that you have to kind of think about it over and over. It might take literally like 9 years for it to get solved, pretty much like it did now. Again, everybody pretty much left it at Shot Gibson. That was it, case closed. But what it actually looks like it's supposed to mimic or parallel or more layers, it's supposed to be the story of Spider-Man, and you can tell right away that the image are pretty much similar. It's with Spider-Man swinging, having somebody under his arm. And there's also a Shot Gibson version of this. Like I said, I'm not trying to discredit. It's probably just another layer. And if you're not familiar with Spider-Man, the story of Spider-Man is exactly the same way that Weasel explained it. Stan Lee, and this is the Zombies version of it that they eventually made. So Stan Lee created Spider-Man when he was younger. Like in this photo, he's probably like in his 70s or 80s. But when he was younger, I think he said it was like 18 years old or 19 years old, he created the idea of Spider-Man, gave it to his editor or publisher, kind of like Weasel did, and his editor publisher did the same exact thing. He scribbled all over it, told them that it'll never work, it's a dumb idea, the character sucks, it's never gonna work. So it looks like to me, and you're probably gonna ask like, what's the proof behind it? So it looks like to me, and there's Stan Lee again, because his name is Stanley Ferguson, so I think that was another Easter egg or clue that a lot of people missed. I kind of noticed this probably maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm like, Stan Lee has to have a meaning why Stan Lee and there's comics. So for me, it looks like it finally came together why he's called Stanley Ferguson, referencing Stan Lee and the way that Spider-Man was created again. He created the idea of Spider-Man when he was 18 or 19. His editor and publisher did the same exact thing. He told them like 20 different reasons why it would never work. And then eventually he decided to just add the character in towards like the end of a comic book, or this Amazing Fantasy was the last issue. And then he said, all right, well, this character isn't going to work, so let me just throw him in there just to fill it in or give it one last chance. I think he might even went like behind his editor's back and put it in there or something like that, or the editor finally agreed to, hey, let's try the character, see what happens. And it obviously ended up being a big hit, and ended up being so it could parallel the story of Mob of the Dead. Maybe at one point Treyarch was like, we don't want to do Alcatraz, we don't want to do Mob of the Dead, it's silly, it's not going to work, nobody's going to believe you, nobody's going to like the story. There might be like same thing, 20 different reasons why they thought maybe Alcatraz would never work, but it's the exact same story, and you can tell it looks exactly the same. And again, the other Easter egg or piece of the puzzle is Stanley Ferguson. Like I know, like I said before, you have to. It seems like I'm going to try and convince people, but I won't. Either you understand it or you see the way that Treyarch does Easter eggs and hides stuff. But obviously his name is Stanley Ferguson. As far as like the Ferguson part, I don't know if there's anything else to it. But that was probably one part of the Easter egg. And you guys might not know, but a lot of and these kind of look like to me the way Spiders and Setsubo Nishima, and that's like, I don't want to go too much off topic or go too crazy, but the way Setsubo Nishima looks, I wonder if that was going to be the original like Mob of the Dead remake. But the way that Spiders put their prey in webs and then hang them up like this, that's probably why these characters or these bodies are hung up like this, because the spider also mimicking like Setsubo Nishima and stuff like that. The spiders wrap up their prey in web and then hang them up like this, so that could probably be another layer that Treyarch did to hint at Spider-Man and the story of Spider-Man. But aside from the Spider-Man, there's a lot of Marvel clues or Marvel Easter eggs that they put inside their maps. And then you also have to look at X-Men: The Last Stand, which takes place in Alcatraz, and the bridge is broken. So I don't know if our bridge being broken, the Mob of the Dead was supposed to maybe also be in the X-Men universe, and the way that Magneto destroyed the bridge. And again, it's from X-Men 2006, The Last Stand, and you can see Alcatraz there. The bridge is broken, so it could be like, hey, maybe this happened in a universe, in the X-Men universe also, keeping the same theme of like Weasel's comics and stuff like that. Again, he crashes the bridge into Alcatraz in the movie, Magneto, if you're not familiar with the characters. And the reason I ended up solving it, I saw this video, so I definitely want to give credit to this video. It's Stan Lee gave a speech about how he first created Spider-Man, and again, it's the same exact story as Weasel's story, where he created Icarus from Mars, and then his editor and publisher shot down his idea. Again, it kind of all fits together perfectly. And just to kind of recap, the only thing I do want to recap again is, and Jason Blundell has said this, and I think other people have said it, is when you solve something, like solving the Spider-Man Easter egg, makes you start solving other stuff, or opens other doors. And I said it's kind of like using a cipher key. Once you figure out the cipher key, you're like, oh wait, now I can use this key to solve like 5 more other Easter eggs. So it makes me wonder now if some way Setsubo Nishima is the Mob of the Dead remake, the original Mob of the Dead remake, that maybe they figured they give it another shot. Because if you look at Setsubo Nishima, it's on an island and there's prisoners underground. And the reason I bring up the X-Men stuff too, so I'm going like back and forth, the facility or labs being underneath Alcatraz is taken from X-Men also. In this version of the movie, or X-Men movie, there's a lab underneath Alcatraz. Now, like I said, I'm trying not to discredit, or I don't want to discredit anything anybody saw before, because I've seen a Reddit post that has so many connections. Like I said, it could just be a red herring. And again, I don't want to get caught up in too much drama, but I know there was one group or channel that was working with Treyarch, and they 100% said that the scrap paper is not, or was never, based on Shot Gibson. It was just a crazy coincidence, in their opinion. I don't think they would try and cover it up, but I wouldn't doubt it also that they're trying to cover it up. Maybe it looked too obvious. Maybe because Treyarch has used stuff before and they got in trouble and they had to take it out of the game. So I don't know if maybe they realized that Treyarch might get in trouble, so like, hey, let's put a video out saying that it's not Shot Gibson. The only other thing that might make sense is Treyarch made a Spider-Man game, and we get Widow's Wine and Shadows of Evil and stuff like that. So there are some differences, or depending on the side of the fence that you're on, that Shot Gibson could have been like one layer, like I said, and then ultimately Spider-Man could have been the other layer, that people didn't see the connection or make the connection at all. You would have to have known. And like I said, I just got kind of stupid lucky that I ended up coming across this video. I'm like, wait, that's exactly the same story of Weasel. And then the guard's name is Stanley Ferguson. And the Stanley Ferguson stuff was a solve that I had thought of years ago. I just never really made the Stanley connection. I said, oh, maybe it's just a reference to Stanley. But it was probably a clue to a bigger, solve, which would be ultimately that this is the story of Spider-Man, that I guess Weasel is supposed to parallel Stanley. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. I'll see you guys later.